What you are about to hear is an opinion piece written by me. Links to my source material can be found in the description box below, and I sincerely encourage you to use them. Do not take my word for it. Do your own research and come to your own conclusions. Sexual harassment on the North Country set. In 2005, a film challenged the way we look at gender politics and the relationships between men and women in the workplace. It was called North Country. In the movie, Charlize Theron plays a woman named Josie Ames, a single mother who goes to work at a steel mine so she can take care of her family. The men working at the mine don't want women there, and they take to severely harassing Josie and other women in an attempt to make them quit. The story, which is based on true events, was no doubt an eye-opener for men, and probably even some women, to see the extremes that the male miners went to in harassing their female coworkers, all because they were terrified that they were going to take their jobs from them. However, not all the harassment that took place during production of this landmark movie was caught on film. In fact, most of it wasn't. You see, as a result of the actress's inability to cope with the tensions brought on by the movie's heavy psychological weight, they resorted to harassing the men in the cast and crew between takes. The males fell victim to everything from lewd comments to physical assaults of a sexual nature whenever the cameras weren't rolling, all because these women weren't mature enough as performers to deal with the emotional content of the project they were working on. Some, if not all of you, may be asking the question, if none of this was caught on film, how do you know what happened? And the answer is simple. They bragged about it. In several interviews, actresses Charlize Theron and Rusty Shwimmer, as well as director Niki Caro, talked about how women in the cast relieved their tensions by sexually harassing others on set. And yes, they actually used the term sexually harassing. In an interview with Wilson Morales of blackfilms.com, Ms. Theron claimed that our asses were grabbed when the cameras rolled during the day, and when it didn't, I grabbed asses back. It made me feel better. Forgetting apparently that as an Academy Award winning actress and the star of the film, she held sway over the work environment and had many of the men she was grabbing at a power imbalance. While in an interview for A Night at the Movies, Rusty Shwimmer described one particular day of shooting as filled with let the women sexually harass the male crew, referring to it as Turnabout Day, and said she felt that the men enjoyed it despite describing them as being intimidated. Then there are 3 interviews where Niki Caro claimed women in the cast were sexually harassing people on set, naming Theron specifically as a perpetrator and that the male members of the crew were her targets. In one particular interview with Dark Horse Horizon's Paul Fisher, Ms. Caro described herself as a willing accomplice, stated that it was a very un-PC work environment, and that she couldn't tell the interviewer what the women had said or done because it was obscene. In 2006, entertainment columnist Jim Shembri wrote a 3-page article on Charlize Theron for The Age, in which Niki Caro took part. The piece was titled Joking with the Slapparazzi, and the first page was dedicated to the actress's antics on the North Country set. Both Theron and Caro confirmed that the shenanigans had taken place. The director described the women's language as just vile and claimed, "I've never seen so many Hollywood macho male crew members blush so crimson and be so silent for so long." Ms. Caro became somewhat apprehensive about her use of the term sexual harassment and felt it necessary to differentiate the actions of the women from the abuse depicted in the movie, stating, "I've thought a great deal about this. Whenever somebody's dignity is compromised, that's the line." Some might argue that the New Zealand native didn't think about it enough, because the fact that these macho men blushed so deeply and went so silent were clear signs that their dignity had been compromised. Truth be told, If these men had been enjoying the attention they were receiving, then they wouldn't have gone silent. In fact, their behavior would have been the opposite, because they would have wanted to attract more of said attention. Their silence was an attempt to avoid being noticed. Then, as if adding salt to the wound, Charlize commented that the nice thing was we were surrounded by men who were not intimidated by women. What utter ignorance and total sexism on your part, Ms. Theron. Just simply outrageous. You harass these men to the point of visible discomfort. Ms. Caro allows it to continue despite the obvious signs, and then you mock the idea of men speaking up as if it is a symptom of weakness. That attitude is absurd. Now, I'm certainly not saying none of the men enjoyed receiving some ass grabbing at the hands of the actresses. Many may have. But based on Ms. Caro's description of some people's reactions, not every guy was into it. As the saying goes, compliance doesn't necessarily equal consent, and since their boasts claimed that men in the crew had been targeted, it's not out of line to point out that there is a big power difference between a tradesman working on set and an Oscar-winning actress like Theron. In addition, there's a certain type of peer pressure men would receive from other men in this type of situation. Just imagine the reaction a guy would get if he objected to comments or physical actions put upon him by women as attractive as Charlize Theron or any other actress in the cast. Attacks on his masculinity would abound, and he'd feel even more embarrassed being ridiculed by others, as if it made him less of a man to object to attentions he wasn't comfortable with but should actually be grateful for simply because the source was a woman. Maybe this harassment was a sort of stress release for male cast members like Jeremy Renner, Woody Harrelson, or Sean Bean, as the script called for some of them to act horribly towards their female co-stars. It's possible the male cast was suffering from a sort of gender-based guilt over how the men in the mines had treated these women. According to Niki Caro, Jeremy Renner became very emotional after doing a scene where he had to be very physical with Charlize Theron and needed to be consoled afterwards. However, and without meaning to condone the harassment of any person, I must reiterate that the power dynamic between these women and their male co-stars is far more level than with a prop guy, key grip, or that fellow at the craft service table. We'll probably never know all of what went on behind the scenes during the filming of North Country, but I have a strange suspicion that in light of recent events, if the genders were reversed, nobody would be laughing. They'd be accusing, because that's how hypocrisy works. Thank you for watching.